Caleb Hayes collapsed in the middle of a billion-dollar merger because the pain tearing through my palm somehow entered his body instead of staying in mine. I was 3 floors below him, trapped in the service corridor behind the executive kitchen, pressing a towel against the glass cut in my hand and trying not to leave blood on the white marble. The bond between us had been dead for 2 years. I knew it was dead because I had begged it to answer me once, and all I got back was silence. But above me, in a boardroom full of lawyers, investors, and men who feared his name, the Alpha Say suddenly dropped his pen, clutched his right hand, and went white. Later, one of the assistants would whisper that Mr. Hayes had stared at his unmarked palm like he had been stabbed by a ghost. At that exact moment, I looked down at my own hand and saw the blood soaking through the towel. I should have run then. I should have walked out through the loading dock, thrown my borrowed uniform in a trash bin, and disappeared before anyone connected the broken Omega hiding downstairs to the Alpha everyone thought untouchable. But the elevator chimed before I could move. Not the staff elevator. The private one. His. The silver doors opened without a sound, and Caleb Hayes stood there in his charcoal suit, breathing hard, one hand still curled like it hurt to unclench his fingers. There was no wound on him. No blood. No broken skin. Only his eyes, dark and furious, fixed on the towel I was trying to hide behind my back. "Show me your hand," he said. The command hit the old place inside me where the bond used to live, but nothing warm answered. No pull. No comfort. Just that terrible, impossible ache in my palm pulsing once. And then his jaw tightened as if the same pulse had gone through him. My throat closed. He felt it. Not guessed. Not suspected. Felt it. I took one step back, and his gaze dropped to the floor where a single red drop had landed between us. "No," I whispered, because that was the only word I still trusted around him. His nostrils flared, not with anger this time, but with confusion sharp enough to cut. Caleb Hayes did not get confused. He bought companies. Before breakfast, he broke rivals with one phone call. He turned silence into a weapon and rooms cold just by entering them. But now he was staring at my bleeding hand like it had rewritten the laws of his body. "Ethan," he said, and hearing my name in his voice after 2 years nearly hurt worse than the glass. The pain flashed hotter. His hand jerked. He looked down again, and I saw it happen across his face. The exact moment he understood this was not sympathy, not scent, not instinct. It was transmission. My pain had crossed a bond that should not exist. "That's impossible," he said. I almost laughed. Impossible was standing in front of me pretending the universe had only betrayed him today. Impossible was the night I had called for him until my voice broke, until the bond went silent, until I understood that a bond could die without making a sound. He had not come then. He had not felt me then. So why now? The question must have shown on my face, because his expression changed. Not softened. Caleb Hayes did not soften, but something behind his eyes cracked, just enough for me to see the first edge of fear. "When did this start?" he asked. I pressed harder against the towel. Another sting climbed up my arm. He inhaled sharply and grabbed the elevator frame. Proof. Concrete, undeniable proof. My wound. His pain. My body. His reaction. The broken bond between us moving like a damaged wire beneath the floor. I should have felt vindicated. Some ugly part of me wanted to say, "Good. Feel it. Feel what you left me to survive alone." But the rest of me was colder than that. Because if Caleb could feel this little cut, what would happen if the real wound opened? The old one. The one I had buried under 2 years of locked doors and unanswered questions. I took another step back. "You didn't feel it before," I said. My voice shook, but I did not let it break. "So don't pretend you care now." His face went still. The pain in my palm throbbed again, and this time he did not hide the way it hit him. His fingers curled against nothing. His eyes stayed on mine. "Before when?" he asked. And that was when the dead place in my chest gave one weak, terrifying pulse. I did not answer him. Answering would have meant opening the door to that night, and I had spent 2 years stacking every piece of my life against it. Instead, I turned toward the service exit and reached for the metal bar with my injured hand. The second my fingers closed around it, Caleb made a sound behind me. Not loud, not dramatic, but sharp enough to stop me. His own fingers clamped around empty air. "Index and middle," he said, voice low. "The cut runs between them. It burns when you grip." My hand went still on the bar. I had wrapped the towel too tightly for him to see the wound. He could not have known. A cold wave moved through me, worse than fear, because this was not a guess anymore. It was evidence. I slowly looked back. Caleb was still standing in the elevator doorway, but the command had drained from his posture. He looked less like a man who owned the building and more like someone trapped inside his own skin. "Stop doing that," I said. His eyes narrowed. "Doing what?" "Feeling things that belong to me." The words landed harder than I expected. His face went blank, but his hand twitched again when pain pulsed under the towel. The elevator doors tried to close on his shoulder. He caught them without looking, jaw tight, and for one strange second the most powerful alpha I had ever known looked like he was holding open a door against fate itself. Footsteps sounded at the end of the corridor. Kitchen staff. Maybe security. Maybe one of his assistants, already searching for the reason their untouchable CEO had collapsed upstairs. Caleb heard them too. His gaze flicked past me, then back. "You're bleeding. And you're trespassing in my pain." That finally made him flinch. Not from the cut. From the sentence. I saw it. And I hated that I saw it. Because once I had known every small shift in his expression. Once, the bond had made his silences feel safe. Now they felt like locked rooms. The footsteps came closer. I pushed the towel deeper into my palm, hiding the blood. Caleb inhaled through his teeth. Another confirmation. Another piece of proof neither of us wanted. "Ethan," he said, quieter now. "If I can feel it, then something is wrong." A laugh scraped out of me, dry and ugly. Something was wrong 2 years ago. His eyes sharpened. "Tell me what happened." "No, I need to know." "You needed to know then." The corridors seemed to tighten around us. The pain in my hand throbbed once, but the deeper ache came from somewhere old and sealed. From a memory I refused to hand him just because his body had finally become inconvenient. Caleb stepped out of the elevator. I stepped back. He stopped immediately. That was new. Caleb Hayes did not stop unless the world made him. Now I had. "Don't come closer," I said. His throat moved. "All right." One word. No command. No threat. The power between us shifted so suddenly it almost made me dizzy. The Alpha CEO who could have had me escorted upstairs with a nod was standing 3 feet away, obeying a boundary I had drawn with a bleeding hand. Then the staff rounded the corner. 2 line cooks froze. A junior assistant behind them turned pale when she saw Caleb. Her eyes jumped from his strained face to my towel. Caleb moved before anyone could speak. Not toward me. In front of me. His body blocked their view of the blood, and his voice returned cold enough to frost glass. "Leave." They vanished. Just like that. The corridor emptied. Protection should not have hurt. It did. Because the last time I had needed him between me and the world, he had not been there. Caleb turned back, and the controlled mask was already cracking again. "You said I didn't feel it before." His voice lowered. "Before what?" The towel slipped slightly. A thin line of blood ran down my wrist. His gaze dropped, and pain flickered across his face, but he did not look away this time. "Answer me." "No," I said again, but this time my voice trembled. Not because I was afraid of him, because part of me wanted him to know, and that part was the most dangerous thing in the corridor. His hand pressed against his own palm. "Ethan, please. Please." That word, from him, opened something small and terrible. The dead place in my chest pulsed again, harder than before. Caleb staggered half a step, not from my cut this time. My palm had gone numb. This pain was higher, deeper, buried beneath my ribs. His face drained of color. "What was that?" he whispered. I backed into the door, my breath breaking. "That," I said, "is what you didn't feel the night I begged the bond to bring you to me." Caleb's knees bent as if the memory had struck him before I even told him what it was. Caleb caught himself against the elevator frame before he fell, but the sight of him bending under a pain I had not even named made the corridor tilt beneath my feet. My hand was still bleeding, yet his face said the cut was no longer the worst thing moving between us. "Don't," I said, though I did not know whether I meant don't feel it, don't ask, or don't look at me like you finally understand the shape of the wound. His breath came unevenly. "That wasn't your hand." I hated that he knew. I hated more that he was right. The ache beneath my ribs had already faded back into its locked room, leaving only the sting in my palm and the sick realization that the bond did not react equally to pain. A cut made him flinch. A memory nearly dropped him to his knees. That difference mattered. I saw him realize it too. Caleb straightened slowly, his alpha control rebuilding itself piece by piece, but not fast enough to hide the fear in his eyes. We need to test what triggers it. No, I said immediately. I'm not one of your acquisitions. That's not what I meant. It's always what men like you mean. The old anger steadied me better than the door at my back. I pressed the towel tighter. Caleb's fingers curled, but this time he did not command me to stop. He only looked at my hand, then at my face, calculating and terrified in equal measure. Somewhere above us, his phone began vibrating again and again in his pocket. The boardroom wanted its king back. The merger wanted its signature. His empire was still waiting for him to return untouched. But he did not reach for the phone. That was the first real consequence. He chose the corridor over the room upstairs, and I could not decide whether that made him better or more dangerous. If this happens while I'm driving, he said, or in front of the wrong people, they'll use it. If it happens to you when you're alone, I am always alone. The words came out too fast. Pain stabbed through my ribs again, not as deep as before, but sudden enough to steal my breath. Caleb's hand flew to the same place on his chest. He hissed and leaned one shoulder against the wall. Proof again. Not my palm this time. Not a visible injury. A sentence. A truth too close to the scar. His eyes lifted to mine, and for once there was no accusation in them. Only recognition. It spikes when you say something true. My stomach turned. Don't make this sound clean. I'm not. He took a careful breath. Physical pain passes through. Emotional pain hits harder. The corridor seemed too narrow for that sentence. I wanted to deny it, but the evidence was standing in front of me, pale and sweating through a suit that probably cost more than the apartment I had hidden in after I left him. Another vibration buzzed from his pocket. This time Caleb pulled the phone out, glanced at the screen, and ended the call without answering. Power shifted again, quiet but real. The world was calling him back, and my pain had more authority than all of it. You need a doctor for that hand, he said. And you need distance from me. Distance didn't stop it. That silenced me. He stepped aside, giving me a clear path to the elevator instead of blocking it. There's a medical kit in my private office. No staff. No questions. You can treat the cut yourself. I'll stand across the room. It sounded almost reasonable, which made it worse. Caleb Hayes had built his life on controlled rooms and closed doors. I had survived by never entering them. But my palm was starting to go numb, and every beat of pain that traveled through me now had an echo in him. If I collapsed, he might collapse too. If he collapsed, half the building would come running. I walked into the elevator because the alternative had become more dangerous than him. Caleb followed only after I moved to the far corner. The doors closed between us and the corridor, sealing us inside a mirrored box where there was nowhere to hide the way we both watched the same hand. He pressed the top floor button. I looked at his reflection instead of his face. Say it, he said quietly. The phrase that made it worse. No, Ethan. No, my voice cracked on the second refusal, and pain snapped under my ribs like a wire pulled too tight. Caleb doubled over, one hand braced against the mirrored wall. The elevator shuddered upward. I grabbed the rail with my good hand, panic rushing hot and fast. Stop asking. Then tell me how to keep it from hurting you. You can't. The answer came from the part of me that had learned that lesson in the dark. The elevator lights flickered once. Not from power. From the bond. A thin line of silver heat crawled under the skin at my wrist, exactly where the mark had faded 2 years ago. Caleb saw it. His own wrist jerked, as if something under his cuff had burned him too. Slowly, with a dread I could feel even without the bond, he pulled back his sleeve. The same silver line was there, faint and broken, pulsing in time with mine. He looked at it like a man staring at a locked door he had once sworn did not exist. I whispered the words before I could stop myself. That was the night the bond died. The elevator doors opened onto his private floor, and the mark on Caleb's wrist flared bright enough to make him gasp. The flare vanished almost as quickly as it came, leaving Caleb gripping his wrist and me staring at mine like it belonged to a stranger. For 2 years, that mark had been nothing but a faded crescent under my skin, a pale scar where warmth used to live. Now it had burned bright in his private elevator, answering his body before it answered mine. Don't touch it, I said when he reached for me. He stopped. Again, that obedience should have made me feel safer, but it only made the room beyond the elevator feel more dangerous, because Caleb listening now did not erase the night he had not listened at all. His private office opened before us in glass and shadow. The city spread below like a field of cold stars. He moved to a cabinet near the wall, took out a medical kit, and placed it on the low table between us without stepping close. "Use what you need," he said. I waited for the command hidden beneath the kindness. It did. Not come. That made my chest tighten worse. I sat, keeping the table between us, and began unwrapping the towel. The cut had stopped bleeding heavily, but the skin gaped when I flexed my fingers. Caleb's breath caught at the same moment mine did. He turned away sharply, one hand pressed against his own unmarked palm. "Proof. Again, but now proof felt like a trap. "You said that was the night the Bond died," he said, voice rough. I opened an antiseptic packet with my teeth. It did. "Tell me." The packet tore. Liquid spilled cold over my fingers. Caleb hissed as if the sting had touched him too, but I did not look up. I was in the old East Wing. I said before I could stop myself. The words came out flat, because if I let them carry feeling, they would carry too much. The storm had knocked out half the security lights. I had been trying to reach you for hours. His head turned slowly. I was in Chicago that night. My hand froze. The antiseptic dripped onto the table. "No. Ethan, I was at the airport when your first call came in. I remember because I sent the car back for you." The room went so quiet I could hear the hum of the glass walls. There was no car. Caleb's face changed. Not guilt. Not yet. Something colder. Calculation turning into alarm. There was. I gave the order myself. Pain flickered under my ribs, fast and hot. He grabbed the edge of the table, but did not look away. "You're lying," I said. "No, then you didn't check." That hit him harder than the cut. His shoulders stiffened, and for 1 second I saw the Alpha CEO return. The man who hated being accused, hated losing control, hated any version of the world where he had failed without knowing it. Then the pain in my chest sharpened, and his expression broke before the defense could fully form. "No," he said again, but this time it sounded like he was saying it to himself. I wrapped gauze around my hand with fingers that had started to tremble. "I called through the bond after the phone died. I thought you would feel it. I thought that was what bonds were for." The mark at my wrist pulsed once, weak and silver. Caleb's sleeve shifted as his own answered. His eyes dropped to it. I didn't feel anything. Exactly. The word cut the air between us. I screamed until I couldn't breathe. "I begged you to come." And then there was nothing. No warmth. No pull. No you. The pain rose so fast I nearly folded over the table. Caleb staggered back, knocking into the glass wall hard enough to rattle it. But he did not tell me to stop. He did not ask me to make it easier. He just stood there, taking the echo of what I had survived alone. When the wave passed, his face was pale, his eyes fixed on my wrist. "That isn't how a severed bond behaves," he whispered. I looked down. The silver line had not faded this time. It was broken in 3 places, each break dark at the edges, like something had burned through it from the outside. Caleb crossed to his desk, not toward me, and opened a locked drawer with hands that were no longer steady. He pulled out a slim black phone I had never seen before, old, powered off, preserved like evidence or a mistake. "My emergency bond line," he said. "The one only you had." My stomach turned cold. I called that number. He powered it on. The screen lit his face from below. There were no missed calls. No messages. No record of me at all. Then the mark on both our wrists pulsed once more, and a line of text appeared on the dead phone. Dated the night I broke. Signal blocked at source. The words stayed on the screen like a sentence passed over a body that had never been buried. Signal blocked at source. Caleb did not move. Neither did I. The city beyond the glass kept shining, cold and distant, as if the world had no idea that the thing I had mourned for 2 years had just blinked back to life in a dead phone. "At source," he said, and his voice was no longer the voice that had moved boardrooms and broken men. It was stripped down to something raw. "That means the message left you." My fingers tightened around the gauze. Pain sparked across my palm. He felt it, but this time he barely flinched. His eyes stayed on the screen. "It left you," he repeated, slower. "But it never reached me." I should have felt relief. I should have felt something clean, something that said maybe I had not been abandoned exactly the way I remembered. But grief did not loosen that easily. It turned sharp instead. "So what?" I whispered. The result was the same. His gaze lifted to mine. "No, it wasn't." The mark on my wrist pulsed before I could answer. Caleb's pulsed with it, and for one breath the broken silver lines matched, 3 burned gaps glowing black at the edges. Then the phone vibrated in his hand. Another line appeared beneath the first. Comfort channel failed. Recognition channel failed. Distress channel partial. My mouth went dry. Caleb stared as if the words were being carved into him. The old bond had not been silent because there was nothing left. It had been trying to speak with its throat crushed. Warmth failed. Recognition failed. Comfort failed. Only distress had survived. Only pain. The room seemed to tilt, and the bandage slipped from my injured hand. Caleb stepped forward by instinct, then stopped when my shoulders tensed. That small stop changed more than any apology could have. He was learning the boundary before asking for forgiveness. "Ethan," he said, barely above a breath. The bond didn't break. I looked down at my wrist. The mark answered with one weak pulse, not warm, not loving, only aching. "Don't say that." It didn't. His own voice shook now. It was blocked. The word landed between us, and everything before it rearranged itself in my head. The dead silence. The unanswered calls. The night in the East Wing. The way my chest had gone hollow all at once. Not like a bond fading, but like someone had slammed a door inside it. For 2 years I had believed the absence was proof that Caleb had not chosen me. Now the proof had become a wound with a different shape. Not innocence. Not forgiveness. But not the truth I had lived under either. Caleb gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles blanched. I should have checked. The pain in my ribs stirred, dangerous and deep. His breath hitched with it. "Don't," I said. "Don't make this about saying the right thing because it hurts." His eyes closed once. When he opened them, he did not defend himself. "Then I'll say the wrong thing honestly. I believe the bond went quiet because you rejected it." The word struck harder than the antiseptic. "You thought I rejected you? I was told you left." A flash of old anger cut through the horror. "And you believed it." Pain flared through my chest. Not memory now, but accusation. Caleb staggered against the desk, the phone nearly slipping from his hand. The screen flickered again. Distress channel active. It was not just recording the past. It was reacting to us now. To the truth. To the lie. To every sentence that touched the scar. Caleb saw it too. His face changed with the terrible understanding. "It isn't punishing me," he said. "It's trying to get the message through." I wanted to hate him for understanding. I wanted to hate the bond for choosing now, after I had learned how to live without warmth. But the mark at my wrist pulsed again, and for the first time since the corridor, the pain did not feel like a blade. It felt like knocking from the other side of a wall. Weak. Desperate. Alive. That frightened me more than death. Caleb set the phone on the table between us like evidence neither of us owned. The power in the room shifted again. He was no longer the alpha CEO with answers, and I was no longer the abandoned Omega with only pain as proof. We were both standing in front of a damaged thing that had kept one signal alive when every gentler part had been cut off. "If distress is the only channel left," he said, "then every time you hurt, it will choose pain because pain is the only door still open." The mark burned brighter. My knees weakened. Caleb took one step, stopped himself, and let his hands fall open at his sides. "Tell me how to help without touching you." The question broke something smaller than the bond and more dangerous than trust. I looked at the phone, then at the black gaps in my mark. "We have to find out what happened the night it was blocked." Caleb's jaw tightened. "That means going back to the memory." The room chilled. My body knew the answer before I said it. The mark pulsed once, and the pain beneath my ribs answered from the place I had buried that night. Caleb bent under the echo, but he did not look away. "Then let it through," he whispered, and the bond, crippled and starving, opened the only door it still had. The room disappeared in pieces. First the glass walls, then the cold lights, then Caleb's office beneath my feet. What came back was rain hammering against old windows and the taste of blood where I had bitten my lip to keep from screaming. I was not fully there, not fully here. One hand gripped the edge of Caleb's table, the other burned inside fresh gauze. Across from me, Caleb folded forward as if the memory had hooked beneath his ribs and pulled. "Ethan," he gasped. "I can feel, don't narrate it," I snapped. The shame came before the fear. That was the first new truth. Not pain, not panic, but shame so old and familiar it slid under my skin like cold water. The bond seized on it. Caleb's face twisted. His hand went to his throat, not his chest. as if he were feeling the words I had swallowed that night. The phone on the table flashed. Distress channel active. Emotional load rising. Stop it, I whispered, but I did not know who I was asking. The bond, Caleb, myself. Caleb reached toward me, stopped halfway, then lowered his hand to the table palm up. Not touching, offering. Tell me what boundary keeps you safe. That was not the Caleb I remembered. The Caleb I remembered would have solved, ordered, contained. This one was shaking under my shame and asking permission. The pain softened by a fraction. The phone flickered again. Load stabilizing. Caleb saw it. So did I? We both understood at the same time, and the understanding frightened me more than the memory. The bond did not calm because he was near. It calmed because he did not take. I don't want your pity, I said. It isn't pity. The pain spiked instantly. Caleb staggered, catching himself on the table. The phone flashed red. Defensive response detected. My laugh came out broken. Even the bond knows when you're trying to sound clean. His face went pale, but he did not argue. He swallowed whatever defense had risen in him and forced the next words out raw. I don't know what it is yet. I want it to be care. I'm afraid it's guilt. The red warning dimmed. My breath caught. That honesty should not have mattered. It did. The memory shifted again. Me on the East Wing floor, phone dead, wrist burning, rain swallowing every sound. I had called through the bond until my chest felt scraped hollow. Caleb's knees hit the carpet in front of the table. Not from physical pain. From the loneliness. He pressed one fist to his sternum, eyes squeezed shut. You were alone, he said. Don't. You were alone, and I didn't check. The words were ugly, imperfect, without polish. The pain did not vanish, but it changed shape. It stopped stabbing and became a weight. Heavy. Shared. I hated the relief that followed. I hated that part of me wanted to put it down because someone else had finally picked up the other side. Caleb opened his eyes. They were wet, but he did not use that as a weapon. He stayed where he was, lower than me, hands visible, voice quiet. If I ask what happened next, will it hurt you? Everything hurts me. The bond pulsed. Caleb flinched. I saw him almost say something comforting, then stop himself. Good. Comfort too soon would have felt like theft. Instead, he looked at the phone. Then we slow it down. You don't get to manage my trauma like a meeting. No. He breathed through another echo of pain. I mean, we stop when you say stop. The power shifted again, but this time it did not feel like a door slamming. It felt like a key being placed in my hand. I looked at him on his knees in his own office. The alpha CEO who had once seemed taller than every room now brought down by feelings I had survived without witnesses. If you lie, I said, it gets worse. I know. If you defend yourself, it gets worse. I know. If you touch me without asking, I leave. He looked up at that. Then I asked. The mark at my wrist gave one weak pulse. Not warmth. Not forgiveness. But not agony either. For a single breath, the bond held steady between us, damaged and trembling, while neither of us moved. Then the phone vibrated again, softer this time. Distress channel can be muted. My stomach turned cold. Caleb read it, and every bit of fragile steadiness drained from his face. Beneath the message, a second line appeared. Warning. Muting may silence remaining bond response. The words on the phone were too quiet for how much damage they carried. Caleb read them once, then again, and the silence that followed felt worse than any scream the bond had pulled from either of us. Distress channel can be muted. Warning. Muting may silence remaining bond response. My first reaction was not fear. It was relief, sudden and shameful. A way to stop it. A way to seal the open door before more of me spilled through it. Then the second line sank in, and relief turned into something colder. If the distress channel went silent, there might be nothing left between us at all. No warmth. No recognition. No pain. Just the same dead quiet I had mistaken for truth for 2 years. Caleb slowly reached for the phone, then stopped with his fingers hovering above it. He looked at me first. That should not have hurt, but it did. Because the old Caleb would have chosen the option that gave him control. This one was waiting for permission, and I hated that the difference mattered. It can end, he said. His voice was rough, almost unrecognizable. The pain can end. For you? I said. The mark on my wrist pulsed once, sharp as a warning. His jaw tightened, but he did not defend himself fast enough to trigger another spike. For both of us, maybe. Or it leaves me alone with it again. That sentence hit the bond like a match dropped into oil. Pain burst under my ribs so violently that I doubled forward, one hand slamming against the table. Caleb cried out and folded with me, his shoulders striking the edge of the desk. The phone flashed red. Abandonment response. Load critical. There it was. Not a theory. Not a metaphor. The bond named the thing I had been trying not to say. Abandonment. Caleb stared at the screen, breathing hard, and the word reflected in his eyes like a verdict. That's the wound, he whispered. Merger, your clean suit, your perfect life. No more collapsing because I remember something. He looked at the private elevator, then back at me. For the first time, I saw the temptation clearly. Not cruelty. Exhaustion. Fear. A man who had built his entire existence on control now being offered one button that could return his body to him. That made it worse. A cruel choice would have been easier to hate. A human one was harder. The phone vibrated again, softer. Muting requires consent from both bonded sources. My breath caught. Caleb's eyes lifted to mine. The power shifted so sharply the room seemed to tilt. He could not end this without me. I could not end it without him. The bond, broken and starving, had still left consent at the center of its last door. For one wild second, I wanted to laugh. So that's it, I said. The bond has better boundaries than we ever did. Caleb flinched, and this time the pain did not spike. Maybe because he accepted the hit. Maybe because I did not say it to wound him. If you want it muted, he said, I'll agree. The offer should have comforted me. Instead, it opened the darkest place in the room. Because if I asked, and he agreed, I would never know what he would have chosen without my permission giving him cover. If I refused, I might be keeping him chained to pain just to prove he would not leave. Both choices tasted like fear. I stepped back from the table. No, Caleb went still. No to muting. No to deciding for both of us tonight. The mark burned, but gently this time, like a warning pressed under skin. You want proof you aren't doing this because the bond is forcing you? Then you don't get to hide behind my answer. His face went pale. Ethan, tomorrow, I said, though my voice shook. When the pain rises again, when there's a way out in front of you, when I am not begging and you are not being watched by a glowing screen, you choose. Not because I ask. Not because the bond punishes you. Because you decide who you are when leaving becomes easy. Caleb looked down at the phone. The mute option waited there, silent and merciless. Then he set it on the table between us, untouched. And if I fail, he asked. The honest terror in his voice almost undid me. I walked to the elevator before it could. Then the bond won't be the thing that ends us, I said. The doors opened. Behind me, the phone chimed once more. Final mute window available at next overload. Caleb whispered my name, but I did not turn around. The next time the pain came, one of us would have to choose what the bond could not. The elevator doors had almost closed when the overload hit. It did not come like the cut in my palm or the ache beneath my ribs. It came like the night itself had found my spine and climbed inside it. My knees buckled before I could catch the rail. Behind me, Caleb made a sound that was not my name, not a command, just pain torn clean through an alpha who had finally run out of distance. The door slid back open. He was on the floor beside the table, one hand braced against the carpet, the other reaching toward the phone without touching it. The screen burned red. Final mute window active. Consent required. My wrist felt like it was splitting down the old broken line. His did too. I saw him bite down on the pain instead of asking me to stop it, and that choice, small and brutal, pushed me back into the room. No, he rasped when he saw me move. Stay away. It's worse near me. It was worse when I was alone. The words struck the bond with such force that the glass walls shuddered. Caleb collapsed onto one elbow. I nearly went down with him, but I held the edge of the table and dragged the phone toward me. The mute option glowed beneath my thumb. One touch from me, one from him. Silence. No more distress channel. No more pain forcing him to feel what I had survived. No more proof. That was the trap. Proof had become another chain. If I kept him hurting, I would never know if he stayed because he wanted to. If I muted everything, I might never know if anything living remained. So I did the only thing that belonged to me. I pressed my thumb to the consent line. The phone flashed. First consent accepted. Caleb's face went white. Ethan, now it's your choice. The pain roared higher. Furious at the door I had opened. My vision blurred. Caleb crawled one step toward the phone, then stopped, shaking so violently the cuff of his shirt slid back and exposed the broken silver mark pulsing black at the gaps. Don't do this to test me. I'm not testing you, I said, though every word scraped my throat. I'm freeing myself from wondering. His eyes lifted. If I press it, you'll think I left again. No. I forced my hand flat on the table, even as the old wound burned beneath the new one. If you press it because you choose yourself, then at least this time I'll know the truth while I'm still standing. That hurt him more than the bond. I saw it land. For 1 second, the Alpha CEO was gone completely. No empire. No command. No cold mask. Just Caleb Hayes, offered the one clean exit he had wanted since the first pain took him down, and realizing that using it would return his body to him, but leave his soul exactly where it had been 2 years ago. The phone slid closer to him as the table trembled between us. Second consent pending. His hand hovered above the screen. My chest tore open with the memory of rain, dead phones, empty halls, and the impossible silence where his answer should have been. He felt all of it. This time I knew he did. His breath broke on each piece. I can't undo that night, he said. The bond flared red, waiting for a lie, a defense, a bargain. None came. I can't make you forgive me. I can't call this love just because it hurts when you hurt. His fingers curled away from the mute command. But I can choose not to leave when leaving finally becomes easy. Then he pushed the phone across the table, away from both of us. Declined. The word flashed once. The pain did not vanish. It peaked, savage and bright, throwing both of us into the same breathless dark. Caleb did not reach for the phone again. He pressed both hands to the floor and stayed there, taking every wave without asking for mercy, without asking for credit, without asking me to come closer. Something in the bond snapped, not breaking, but releasing pressure, like a locked room opening after years without air. The red light faded to white. Distress. Overload ended. The pain stopped so suddenly the silence rang. Caleb stayed on the floor, trembling, free of it. Free of me. Free to stand, turn away, return upstairs, become untouchable again. Instead, he lifted his head and looked at me across the ruined distance between us. I'm still here, he whispered. He rose slowly, not coming closer until I allowed it with a breath I could barely manage. The bond was silent. His pain was gone. And Caleb Hayes still took one careful step toward me. The elevator doors had almost closed when the overload hit. It did not come like the cut in my palm or the ache beneath my ribs. It came like the night itself had found my spine and climbed inside it. My knees buckled before I could catch the rail. Behind me, Caleb made a sound that was not my name, not a command, just pain torn clean through an alpha who had finally run out of distance. The doors slid back open. He was on the floor beside the table, one hand braced against the carpet, the other reaching toward the phone without touching it. The screen burned red. Final mute window active. Consent required. My wrist felt like it was splitting down the old broken line. His did too. I saw him bite down on the pain instead of asking me to stop it, and that choice, small and brutal, pushed me back into the room. No, he rasped when he saw me move. Stay away. It's worse near me. It was worse when I was alone. The words struck the bond with such force that the glass walls shuddered. Caleb collapsed onto one elbow. I nearly went down with him, but I held the edge of the table and dragged the phone toward me. The mute option glowed beneath my thumb. One touch from me, one from him. Silence. No more distress channel. No more pain forcing him to feel what I had survived. No more proof. That was the trap. Proof had become another chain. If I kept him hurting, I would never know if he stayed because he wanted to. If I muted everything, I might never know if anything living remained. So I did the only thing that belonged to me. I pressed my thumb to the consent line. The phone flashed. First consent accepted. Caleb's face went white. Ethan, now it's your choice. The pain roared higher, furious at the door I had opened. My vision blurred. Caleb crawled one step toward the phone, then stopped, shaking so violently the cuff of his shirt slid back and exposed the broken silver mark pulsing black at the gaps. Don't do this to test me. I'm not testing you, I said, though every word scraped my throat. I'm freeing myself from wondering. His eyes lifted. If I press it, you'll think I left again. No. I forced my hand flat on the table, even as the old wound burned beneath the new one. If you press it because you choose yourself, then at least this time I'll know the truth while I'm still standing. That hurt him more than the bond. I saw it land. For 1 second, the Alpha CEO was gone completely. No empire. No command. No cold mask. Just Caleb Hayes. Offered the one clean exit he had wanted since the first pain took him down, and realizing that using it would return his body to him, but leave his soul exactly where it had been 2 years ago. The phone slid closer to him as the table trembled between us. Second consent pending. His hand hovered above the screen. My chest tore open with the memory of rain, dead phones, empty halls, and the impossible silence where his answer should have been. He felt all of it. This time I knew he did. His breath broke on each piece. I can't undo that night, he said. The bond flared red, waiting for a lie, a defense, a bargain. None came. I can't make you forgive me. I can't call this love just because it hurts when you hurt. His fingers curled away from the mute command. But I can choose not to leave when leaving finally becomes easy. Then he pushed the phone across the table, away from both of us. Declined. The word flashed once. The pain did not vanish. It peaked, savage and bright, throwing both of us into the same breathless dark. Caleb did not reach for the phone again. He pressed both hands to the floor and stayed there, taking every wave without asking for mercy, without asking for credit, without asking me to come closer. Something in the bond snapped, not breaking, but releasing pressure like a locked room opening after years without air. The red light faded to white. Distress overload ended. The pain stopped so suddenly the silence rang. Caleb stayed on the floor, trembling, free of it, free of me, free to stand, turn away, return upstairs, become untouchable again. Instead, he lifted his head and looked at me across the ruined distance between us. I'm still here, he whispered. He rose slowly, not coming closer until I allowed it with a breath I could barely manage. The bond was silent. His pain was gone. And Caleb Hayes still took one careful step toward me.